I'm like 2 glasses of wine and I'm like, fuck that patriarchy.
She's feeling it.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Hate Spinnerbait, the podcast where we hate spinnerbait, but we love Victorian doll collections.
Oh, ooh, good one.
I'm Michael Ann, and with me, as always, is Bethany. Bethany, how's it going? How's your life?
So good. I'm happy to report that I thankfully don't have any creepy, could be possessed porcelain dolls staring at me right now. So I'm going to count that as a win.
Me either. So 10 out of 10.
10 out of 10. No notes. I'm ready to dive into. We're still not even at the okay, it's getting heavy. It is definitely getting heavier. And we have some warning signs, and there is some parental abuse. So we're going to go ahead and get the trigger warning out right here at the top. Again, we are reading Dreamland right now. Obviously, this is a very difficult novel to discuss. There is definitely a lot of potentially triggering things. So like we said last week at the top of our episode, we will be giving a blanketed trigger warning. So if you want to skip out on this one, if abusive relationships are going to be triggering for you, please come join us when we are on our next lighter novel. But yeah, we're not even like that. That sounds terrible to be like, it's not that bad yet, but like it's not even that bad yet still, and I'm still already just like, ooh.
I have a glass of wine for this one today.
Yes.
So.
Oh, I kind of want to text my husband and ask if he can bring me up some wine.
Do it, Mike.
Really, I'm gonna text him right now, actually.
Get your wife some wine and the latest urine report.
Please, yes, we need the latest on the urine. Please and thank you. We'll now be going to Mike for weekly urine reports, everyone. This is what everyone, if you're not in your 30s yet, this is what you have to look forward to in your 30s, is a happening Saturday night is a glass of wine and a book club, basically. And you're like, yeah, doing it. Here we are. We're doing it. No regrets, honestly.
None. Yes. And the fact that we both said, oh my God, we're recording so late. And it's 8 p.m.
8 o'clock. And we're like, wow, this is a really late start. I don't know if we're going to be able to, it's going to be a time. Also, I want it to be known how much this podcast takes up my, how much of my conversations are through this now, either recording with you or in the Discord or whatever. It's just talking about the books and the random other things that come up. That today, when I was hanging out with a couple of friends that were from out of town visiting, the amount of times I was like, oh yeah, when we were recording the podcast, so funny. Mike Land and I were talking about it, and I was like, oh my God, I'm nauseating. The amount of I really wasn't trying to plug. My friend already knows about my podcast, obviously, but just so many conversations. I was like, oh yeah, that's so funny. 2 weeks ago on the podcast, we were talking about. And I was like, oh, I guess this is my life now. I just bring up conversations I have on my podcast. What a cool kid I am.
Yep. That's correct.
All right. Let's, I guess, now that we got some joy out of the way, chapter 4. Here
we're done with that joy.
We're done with joy. Let's get into depressing.
Oh, I didn't
stuff.
do a recap.
Oh my God, yes. Oh, what am I? This is my first rodeo. Yeah, Michael Ann, you got to recap. Also, Mike did bring me the wine, so.
Ooh, cheers. White wine
Cheers.
girlies.
Let's do it. All right. Recap.
Okay, so a recap. We are back in Lakeview, y'all. We are looking at the McCoran family. Cass is the older sister, and we open with her running away from home on the main character, Caitlin's 16th birthday, which, okay, girl. Basically, Cass was like the perfect daughter. She was on her way to Yale. She was protesting. She was advocating. She was wonderful. And mom and dad were obsessed. Mom particularly. And now that she's gone, the whole family's kind of falling apart. Caitlin has been living in her shadow forever. So she's trying to like distinguish herself. So she becomes a cheerleader, which Cass never did. And she has her best friend Rita, who's like the hot girl, which, by the way, Sarah Destin always has a hot best friend.
Yeah.
Always. Like, the best friend's always like, oh, she's so much hotter than me. All the boys love her. I'm like, oh my gosh.
This is another mommy issues and hot best friends. Is that just like being like the nerdy girl, I guess? You know, because it's like, if she's an author, like she probably was a little bookish growing up. And people reading her books are obviously going to be people who gravitate toward that. Does she just think that like that's something that's relatable to us? Because she's right, but
she's right.
She's so right.
Oh god. I was always like, I was talking my friend. I have like one remaining friend from high school. Shout out Emmy. What's up, girl? And I was like telling her like how I thought it was funny that I was like the dumb one of our friends. And she was like, we never thought you were the dumb one. And I'm like, really? I've been telling everybody my whole life that I was the dumb one. And I hung out with all the smart kids, but I was stupid. And she was like, no.
She's like, no, we thought you were pretty bright. And you're like, oh my God, thank you.
Like, oh my God, really? That's crazy.
Yeah, I feel... It's weird because obviously I did most of my friends, like you make friends with people that you're in classes with. And obviously I was in like a lot of like honors types classes. And I'm very not good at like math, science stuff. Like I was much more of like the history, English girl. So I was always very strong in those classes. But yeah, I felt like the dumb friends because like all of my friends like basically went to college to like be engineers and stuff. And I was like, I'm going to go study words. So, you know, we all have our own strengths. Like they aren't good at as good at words as I am. So
it's funny because in high school, all my friends were in advanced classes and the National Honor Society. And I was not. I was in advanced math.
Oh, see, you're the opposite. I could not do math.
But I was in like the lower level science. Like I started, like there was like a special class for kids who were really bad at science freshman year. And that's where I began my journey.
I had to take like dumb math classes in college because they were like, this girl doesn't test well in math. And I was like, you were correct. Because I am not good at math. But I got my college, because you had to do like the prereqs. I like got those done and I was like, okay, no more math for me. Thank you.
I don't even remember. I did my math prereqs so early. I don't even remember doing them. But that's trauma for you guys. I should definitely remember that. It was like 10 years ago. So
she's blacked it out.
Oh, Lord.
Oh man.
Anyway, back to this. So anyway, okay. So basically Cass ran away with some guy that works on a Jerry Springer type show, and the family's falling apart, and Caitlin is like, whoa, this is wild. And that is where we leave off.
And that's what you missed on Glee. To this day, I want you to know that show has not had like a cultural impact in years. And honestly, really only the first season was good. Some of season two. Season 2 had Darren Criss, so it was good. But after that, it pretty much fell off. But to this day, when I'm recapping things to my friends in like person now on this podcast, if someone recaps something, I'm like, and that's what you missed on Glee. Like, it just comes to me. And I'm like, I haven't even, like, when have I watched that show recently? But it's the first thing that pops in my mind. I can't help it.
To be honest, now that we're
all caught up. Yes.
The best Christmas music on the market right now is Glee Christmas music.
The Glee Christmas music is fantastic.
It slaps.
It does. I could listen to the music. I'm certain I still have some of the Glee like cast recordings on my phone. Like I cannot stress how much I love Darren Criss. So I'm certain I have like his version of Teenage Dream. I think I like still bop to in my car to this day.
I love that song. Like period. That's like one of my top songs. That song's very good.
It is very good. And it's very, I mean, obviously I'm obsessed with like coming of age stuff. So it's like, it fits in that realm.
Okay. So chapter 4.
Chapter 4. Here we go. This chapter, obviously the big thing that happens, toward the end, yes, I believe is meeting Rogerson. That does happen in this chapter, I believe. Yep. Okay, it does. That's the big thing. But basically it starts off with, she's going into a little bit about how she hates cheerleading, and she's kind of basically doing it to make her mom happy because her mom has finally like found a purpose in life. And of course the Victorian style dolls. Victorian style, she kind of says everything, but really the Victorian era dolls is what's keeping her afloat right now, kind of. This is a new hobby she's found. Apparently her father, when she's not looking, like turns them around because he says it's like too many people staring at her, which, yeah, respect. My grandma was a big porcelain doll collector, and I always loved them. But sometimes when you were in a room at night, like if I had like a slumber party or whatever at my grandma's and I was in a room by myself at night, it was a little creepy. So I get it.
My mom is a porcelain doll person.
Does she have porcelain dolls? Like, it's such a funny, I don't know. Like, I don't know anyone like our age that collects them, but it is like a thing. Like that used to be such a thing to collect them.
Your grandma's probably like my mom's age. How old's your grandma?
No, my grandma is definitely older. She's passed away, but she died when she died in 2010, 2011. She was in her 80s. So my grandparents on my mom's side, again, Irish Catholic. My grandpa fought in World War II. So like they were bless them. But like they lived through like the Great Depression old.
Wow.
Yeah.
Same.
But it was great because like, and that's maybe why I was so obsessed with history, is because like I literally, my grandma, I will hand on Bible, one of my best friends of all time. Like I loved her. I thankfully got 19 wonderful years with her. Super fortunate. Wish I could have gotten more, but honestly feel fortunate that I got 19 years with her. Love that woman to pieces. Literally one of my best friends of all time. And I think that is why I was so obsessed with history, is because I literally hung out with someone who like lived through so many big, like she could tell me about the Great Depression. She could tell me about World War II. Like she lived through all that, and like was like, she was engaged to my grandpa in World War II. So they were like older. So like had actual good memories, like had memories of Pearl Harbor, had memories. She was in Alabama when MLK was shot, actually. So she has like very vivid memories of that. So like anything I learned in history that was like somewhat modern, I could literally go home and be like, Grandma, where were you when this happened? Do you remember this happening? And she could tell me like firsthand account. And I was obsessed. It's like my own little history lessons.
Every episode, your family gets cuter and more like idyllic, and I'm just over here like, we're
honestly really adorable.
That is not my experience.
This is like very much on my mom's side. My dad's side is like not as idyllic, trust me. But alas, porcelain dolls.
Back to the
back to porcelain dolls. Okay, so essentially Kayla hates cheerleading, but she realizes that it's giving her mom something to do, which makes her happy, even if it does now kind of, she's like, oh God, I kind of get the pressure that Cass felt a little bit. Yeah. So we kind of start off this chapter, and she is explaining how she was chosen for top of the pyramid because she's the lightest. That kind of makes this one girl hate her because she went on birth control and apparently gained 15 pounds, which like, girl, yeah, we've all been there. We get it. So she's obviously over the summer, this girl, Eliza Drake, gained the weight. And so she's no longer at the top of the pyramid. So that makes her sad. We would call those flyers in cheerleading lingo. The lighter people were flyers, and everyone else who was not as light were the bases. So they're doing this whole pyramid thing, and she ends up basically kind of getting injured while doing it. And she's just kind of reflecting, like through this injury, through this chapter, she's kind of explaining how she heard someone yell out. I'm like, I think I'm jumping this way ahead in the chapter, but a lot of this is like, it's one scene in this chapter, but it's like flashbacks as she's like falling off the pyramid. You get like other information. So it's kind of hard. I'm going to jump around a little bit in this one. I apologize. But she heard someone call out like Cass, and that's what like throws her off balance or whatever. But she was saying she felt like someone was like speaking to her, essentially.
I just want to say, I did highlight one area on page 44. that says, the truth was I was trying not to look too hard at anything, not at myself, the swans, my mother mouthing the cheers along with me, the crooked ashtrays, the tired look on my father's face when another Yale bulletin came in the mail. It was easier to just float along as if sleeping that whole first part of the year, going through the motions and staring like one of those ghostly dolls waiting for something to wake me up. And I wrote here that she is like primed and ready for an abuser to take advantage of her. She's like a perfect amount of vulnerable and like disconnecting with herself, because she's already disconnecting with herself by cheerleading to make her mother happy in the first place, because she doesn't even like it. So she's just kind of like, she's ready. She's like perfect timing to get abused.
Okay, so yeah, it's basically at the end of the chapter that we get back to the falling off, how she like fell off the pyramid, and it's the guy yelling Cass. And so she was saying that like, so the night she falls off the pyramid, essentially, again, the way the chapter, it's not like in exact chronological order, but the night that she falls off the pyramid is also the night that she ends up going to the party where she meets Rogerson. And so she was saying she felt like this guy yelling out Cass, which distracted her, and is how she ended up falling, was like her calling out to her. So of course it's like, I think she takes it as a sign that the night that she meets Rogerson, she felt like she was getting this connection from her sister, which she's so desperately been wanting, which obviously no. And again, like you're saying, like she's so primed right now to enter an abuse, because like literally right now she's like, oh, like a guy yelling out my sister's name while I'm doing a cheerleading pyramid is a sign. Like she is just so grasping at straws for some kind of connection. So I just thought that was really interesting, that it's like, oh, of course you think you get a sign from your sister the night that you meet this guy. And even though, which we'll get into as we get into the next couple of chapters, literally, I don't understand why she was attracted to him, like at all. Like, I don't know how they even get past a first date after the terrible first date that they have. But I think it was just, she was so desperate for connection. And it's this weird, like she's in that night, she's so in this mood of like, oh, I got a sign from my sister kind of thing. I did skip ahead a little bit to the end of the chapter, so we can go back to, I have a few other things, mostly the big meeting, which is they're like cleaning out the car after a game because the one friend who has the car, like her boyfriend puked in it, and she's like trying to get that out, and they're like, I don't even know you're bothering, he's just gonna puke in it again. And so her friend is basically telling her, like, her friend Rena is all like, she's with the quarterback, because of course she is, because which she kind of explains, like, oh, you know, she becomes the cheerleader, she immediately gets with the quarterback. And so one of the players on the team is this guy, Mike Evans, which I love. It's like the most generic white guy name of all time. Like I love how they wanted to make him like boring and whatever. And Sarah Destin's like, I know the name, Mike Evans. And she's right. So they basically, she's explaining like while they're like Lysoling the car and all of that about how like, oh, Mike Evans is going to give you his letter jacket tonight. And like, you guys are going to be a thing. And Caitlin's kind of like, I don't even like know him. Like I basically like we barely interacted, but sure, I guess. So yeah, so they're going to like head to this party. And while basically they're getting the car vacuumed, she has to go get quarters. And this is where she first meets Rogerson, which, yeah, at the end of at the bottom of page 49, I got my first look at Rogerson Bisco, which, God, wish she wouldn't have. And she gives a description of him, which is, this is so... Listen, Sarah Destin, I love you so much. And I think that you're a brilliant writer. But this description is the most like how all authors were for some reason describing men in the early 2000s. It's like olive complexion. Why was everyone olive toned in the early 2000s? What does that even mean? I do not know. A little bit later, basically, it sounds like he's like of Greek descent. So like that's what she means, I guess. And his hair is like a big thing that keeps coming up, like the way his hair looks, which basically sounds like he's a white guy with dreadlocks, which big yikes. Yeah. First warning sign should have been that.
Yeah, I know. I was thinking like olives. When I think olive skin, I think like, I don't know, Greek people. But then I'm like, am I thinking that because olives? Is that like me stereotyping olives? I don't know. I have alabaster white skin is what I have.
Yeah. If I was described in a coming of age novel, they would describe me as alabaster one.
Yes.
Ghostly, sickly looking.
Maybe like a Victorian porcelain doll from QVC.
Maybe. Honestly, when I write my memoir one day, guys, that's the description I'm going to pick. Victorian era doll from QVC. That's my complexion.
Oh, jeez. Yeah. He sounds gross.
Yeah. Penny loafers, rich, pretentious douchebag.
And like, but here's my thing. Yes, he sounds like a rich, pretentious asshole. He has a BMW. He's wearing penny loafers with no socks. He's wearing khakis, but he has dreadlocks.
Right.
I can't grasp it in my head. Like what?
No.
Like, what does this man? I'm rejecting the dreadlocks in my head.
Yeah, I can't fathom it. Like the first time she explains it, it's like his hair, massive curls thick enough that they were almost like dreadlocks. But then every other time it's explained, it's basically like it's dreadlocks, and it sounds like his parents kind of hate it because they're rich people. But yeah, in my mind, I'm like, I can't fathom this dreadlocks look with the rest of what he kind of sounds like he is.
There is, not to go on another tangent, I'm so sorry. There is this man who lives in Albany, and he is a creepy predator, but he's white. He has one thick dreadlock that goes all the way down to the ground.
Oh, and it's just one.
That's his hair. It's like a tube of
weird
dreadlock all the way down to the ground.
Oh.
It is, like, if he wasn't a predator, it would still be fucking disgusting. But now that I know he's a predator,
it adds to it. Yeah,
it really adds to it, and it is. I think about it sometimes because I'm like,
this is also why every Black person I've ever met is like, this is why white people can't have dreadlocks. Not because they're like, the culture appropriation is bad enough, but they're like, they don't know how to take care of it. Like, if you ever, like, someone who actually knows how to properly dreadlock hair, and you've heard them talk about like white people dreadlocks, and they're like, it's a mat, and they call it a dreadlock, and it's not, like, it's a totally different art form. And I'm like, no, totally. Like, some white people dreadlocks are just like so bad because they don't know how to like maintain them, you know? And like, that's what that guy sounds like to me. Yeah,
it's disgusting. And he's like proud of it, and I'm like,
dude, no,
it's gross. I saw him walking down the street one time, and I'm like, you need to get that sawed off in the middle of the night. It has to be like filled.
You need help, man.
It's like probably only like 20% hair at this point, if we're being honest.
Oh, I mean, I would assume that's
anyway. The dreadlocks is going to distract me throughout this entire book.
I know. I'm like, so random rich Greek descent, like he says something like his mom is Greek, I guess, guy, but with dreadlocks, apparently. I don't know. Very distracting. So they have like a quick little like banter, nothing that interesting really. Like they don't, again, I don't know like why she's all of them are like, ooh, who's that? And I guess it's just because like, I don't know, when you're in high school and you see the same boys all the time, day in and day out, like you get, I don't know, fresh meat, so to speak, and you're like, ooh, that's someone new to crush on. But still, I'm like, I don't know why any of you are attracted to him, because he does not sound attractive, but I guess. And then she's like, oh, his name's Rogerson. And Rena's like, ooh, that's sexy, which like, yeah, it's kind of a cool name. I'm not going to lie, but it is it's cool ruined by his whole personality.
Yeah. They're like, oh, he's hot, I guess. And then they go to the party. I want to say that Kelly's boyfriend is going to like die during like hazing at a frat house freshman year.
Oh my God. Yes. I see that in his future.
She gets to the party and he's already passed out on the floor against the refrigerator. Like, what?
How long has this party been going on? How have you already had that much to drink?
Right.
Yeah. If you're this sloppy in high school, your freshman year of college is going to be alcohol poisoning written all over it for sure.
For sure. So they're at the party and they're playing quarters constantly, which is funny. I've never played quarters myself, But I did play a mean flip cup and beer pong.
Oh, yeah, beer pong.
So then Rogerson shows up.
Mm-hmm.
Because he is Bill's drug dealer.
Dun, 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 dun. Yeah, pretty much. And then on page 57, which, okay, so he shows up because he's basically Bill's drug dealer. So obviously they're doing a little droppy drop. And then she basically is like with Mike, and it's just like Mike's trying to make the move on her, and she's like, yeah, I gotta go, because she spots Rogerson and wants to go like hang out with him. And she basically is just like, take me home. Like that's her move. It's just like, hey, can you drive me home? And he's like, okay. So he's like, oh, I had plans, so they weren't really about me. And then he has the right to say, which again, I was like, oh, dang, we never did our Keeping the Moon Taylor Swift top 3 songs. But we definitely have to do it for this one. It's starting with Dreamland, y'all. We're going to do it. But this line, I literally had a headache. So it's just like, ironic that you're saying this, sir, but also Taylor Swift. I knew you were trouble, he said in a low voice. Could tell just by looking at you. And it's like, first of all, the script should be flipped there. Second of all, that is a good song for this book. Mm-hmm. If I were to pick a Taylor, I mean, that's like the kind of more fun upbeat one. There will probably be a couple, the other ones will be a little more depressing, but that one is basically, surprising.
I also have to say that I highlighted this as well because I find that people who are going to be abusive always start the relationship off by saying, I knew you were going to be trouble, or right, you are trouble, or something along those lines. It's like, if you start dating someone and they say that to you right away, run.
I was waiting for it. Oh, the amount of times we were going to say run when we were discussing this novel, y'all. Oh, prepare
yourselves, prepare your mind and your body.
No, and that's totally, like, you're totally right, because that's 100% the thing that abusers do, right? Is they always put the blame on you. Mm-hmm. So it's always like, oh, look at the trouble you're going to get me in, or, oh, I knew you were trouble, or, again, one of Taylor Swift's worst song because, but look what you made me do. Like, that kind of terminology is what they always use, especially after they have wronged you. Then it's like, well, I'm sorry I lost my cool back there, but I wouldn't have had to if you hadn't had. And then they gaslight you and tell you all the things you did wrong. So yeah, he's already, again, they have just met. She's all like, hey, drive me home, because again, I don't know why. Mostly because she's, again, trying to step out of Cass's shadow. And she's like, well, Cass wouldn't do this. Like, she'd go hang out with Mike Evans. I'm going to go hang out with the guy with the white man dreadlocks. So she asks for him. And already he's just like giving her crap for absolutely nothing. And they like drive home and they're already like making out in the car. I literally highlighted on page 58 the kissing part, because he's already like trying to take off her bra, and I go, that was quick, is the note I wrote. I'm like, you know nothing about each other. And again, no shame in that if that's what you're into, but I don't think that's the case, at least on Caitlin's side, that what she did is basically like, oh crap, curfew, I gotta go. But yeah, it was just like, oh, wow, we're macking in the car already. Mm-hmm. And she asked him, she's like, what's your last name? Because she was saying, I realized as he struggled to unhook my bra that I didn't even know his whole name. And this suddenly seemed wrong. And it's like, yeah.
Yeah, girl. And he has dreadlocks. So that's enough. Already. Let's cut it there.
Already a hard pass for me. Thanks. Oh, so yeah, so she basically then finishes off this chapter talking about how she goes in and is telling, she writes in like the dream journal because she wants to like tell Cass about this, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
I also want to say that it's freaking weird that some guy in the stands was like repeatedly yelling Cass's name. Like, even if that was Cass, what are you doing?
Do that?
Should you be on a registry?
It's very bizarre to me.
Very bizarre. Okay, so chapter 5. Of course, Rogerson doesn't call her for several days.
Mm-hmm.
And she does reiterate over and over again, like, I'm basically like being with him to step out of Cass's shadow and be like, my own independent person, which I feel like my first abusive relationship, that's kind of what I was trying to do as well. Honestly, I don't even know. Oh, this is when we see Cass in the Lamont Whipper show for the first time.
Yes.
The camera like stays on her for a very long time, it feels like. And her mom is kind of like, she like kneels in front of the TV and
has almost like a religious experience in a sense. Like she really has a moment, which again, I totally understand. Like she's been so worried about her daughter and she sees that she's like alive and well, which is reassuring. I will also say, so in this chapter, in the next couple of chapters, so they have this whole moment. They do immediately try to call the show afterwards. It's like, okay, we now 100% certain. We already had our suspicions that she was with the guy that was working on the show. So they'd already called this number before, but now they know that she is working on the show as well. So they call and they're like, hi, just want to leave a message for a staff member. She's our daughter. Tell her that we love her. We miss her, whatever. But I also was kind of like, okay, you know exactly where she is now. And these parents seem a little overbearing. I'm amazed that they didn't immediately get in the car and head to New York and head to the like studio of that show and like wait for her. Like I'm honestly amazed that like basically her mom just now just like religiously watches that show to see if she could like see her. And I'm like, North Carolina to New York is not that long of a drive for your like missing daughter, essentially. So part of me is like proud of them for respecting her boundaries and like letting her be and letting her come on her own terms back to them. But another part of me is like, my dad would have had his ass in that car and would have been up to New York immediately if he knew where I was.
Yeah, that is surprising, honestly. But also it is, I bet if they showed up, it would have been nothing but trouble.
Yeah. And then she may have not stayed there anymore because she knew she'd been found out, or she would have, it would have just led to a fight and it wouldn't have ended well, and they might have not gotten any more communication. I think honestly the smartest thing was leaving that message and just being like, let her know that we love her. Like, we love you. We know you're okay. Come contact us on your terms, basically, is kind of how I took that message, which I will give them. I'm going to give them credit on that.
Yeah, definitely.
Another thing I thought was sort of funny about this chapter is that, like we said, of course, Rogerson doesn't contact her. But then I also was like, girl, I don't think you ever gave him a way to contact you. So what do you really expect? And then she's like, I expected him to show up at another game or a party or even just drive past my house so they enough to draw to the window or outside. He didn't. And it's like, yeah, like, I don't really know how you expected to, like, it would have been one thing if she was like, oh, here's my number, call me. But she never really does say that. So I was like,
I guess, like,
you know,
back in the day, back in the olden days, he could have just looked her up in the yellow pages. Like, he knows her address.
Yeah, that is true. And we had like landlines back in the day. So he could have, just like literally looked up her house and called her like house phone. Because again, I doubt I mean, I guess by 2000, some people had cell phones, but not like many people. So, and they were trying to pay for their one daughter to go to Yale. So they don't have cell phone money. They're like, oh, that's going to tuition.
Not anymore. They're like, oh shit, we're rich now.
All that money we saved. I also love, I highlighted this on page 66. They're like at cheerleading practice and it's like gone long because the girl is trying to, no, I'm so sorry. This is when they're at the old folks home, for lack of a better word, like the nursing home. That's the word I'm looking for. This is when they're at the nursing home and they do their little performance and then the next guy comes up to do God even knows what. And so Rena's like, I'm over this. And she's like, I'm going outside for a cigarette. And Eliza is like, oh, I'm right behind you. And I was like, man, I love that. Like in 2000, you just had like high schoolers going out to smoke a cigarette.
Right? I know.
I was like, oh, girls, that's not good for you.
Now Nowadays, they just be like pulling a vape out in the middle of the room. Like
100%. Like,
all the
you
old
don't
people
have
would
to
be
go
like,
outside anymore.
No. I also highlighted a spot on page 66. That was like another, sign that she's going to be able to get into a bad relationship and no one's going to notice. She says, talking about her mom, she had been so preoccupied catching every airing of the Lamont Whipper show, which was on daily at 11, 3, and 10 at night on various channels. She hadn't even noticed anything different about me this last week. She'd only seen Cass on one more show, but she still sat through all the catfights and cussing, waiting for another glimpse.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Poor
Pay attention to both of your kids, man.
For the love of God.
For
honestly.
the love of God.
She does, unfortunately, get her wish, though, to run into Rogerson again, because while they're at this nursing home, he, as we find out a little bit later, is doing community service. So her mom, who's there with the junior league, is like, oh, Caitlin, while you're not doing your cheerleading, go in the back and bring out another tray of cookies. And who's back there dishing out the cookies? Ugh, Rogerson, unfortunately. So, and then again, he's talking about how great his hair is, which no, it's not great. And she's all like, why aren't you going to call me? And he's like, I didn't know your last name. And she's like, you know where I live, which, as you pointed out, is probably how he could have called her. And so he's like, yeah, I was working on that, blah, blah, blah. And he's just all cocky and is like, I've got great hair, basically. Meh.
Gross.
So
and then
gross.
they make out.
Yep.
And then they make out.
Ugh.
And she's like, cool. This is it. This is my guy. Ladies.
Yeah. And they're going to go on a little date together, which her mother doesn't think is the best idea. But it is agreed upon that because it is a Saturday that they can go. And apparently they also knew his parents. His mother is a local realtor, so her face is all over town. And the dad was the head of the local pharmaceutical corporation and golfed at the same country club. So again, they're rich. He goes to Perkins Day, which is the rich private school. They live in an even more uppity neighborhood than she does. She lives in the, your upper middle class neighborhood. And these people live in the even more than that kind of neighborhood is what it sounds like. So it's well, he comes from good stock. So we'll allow you to go out with him. And here we have, again, I highlighted this because 2 books in a row now, we have where someone is a junior, but they're the younger brother. Because he has an older brother named Peyton, and he is the Rogerson junior to the Rogerson senior. So we had Norman in Keeping the Moon, and now Rogerson. I think that is very weird that has come up in 2 novels. Just had to point that out.
We'll add that to the list of questions we're going to ask her.
Yeah, so we have a lot about that. He's a 5th year senior, we find out, because he had to take some time off for some problems with administration.
By the way, we are on chapter 6.
Oh yeah, sorry. I apologize. I just jumped on in, but we are in chapter 6, everyone. Rogerson, much like Macon, sounds like he's a freaking criminal.
Yeah, he's
5th year senior, doing community service.
Obviously, he's a drug dealer.
A drug dealer. So he legitimately, at least we know this one's criminal history, as opposed to Macon, where we just were I don't know exactly what you're doing, but it's not legal. At least rich kids are always up to no good in these books. Like in life, but again, they're rich, so they won't ever do time. Wah, wah, wah. And that's one of the many reasons why our criminal justice system is flawed, everyone.
I can't start on that. So what I'm gonna say is Peyton is the most annoying name of all time.
It's not. Yeah, it's not a great name.
It's not a great name.
It's not a good name. Yeah, you're right. Just something about it. Oh,
makes me want to punch you in the face.
Especially for a boy. I don't know why, but a boy named Peyton, I'm oh, you're gonna be pretentious, aren't you? That just rubs me the wrong way.
A total dickhead.
I'm sorry for anyone out there named Peyton.
I know. If you're a girl, I dig it. If you're a boy, maybe use your middle name. I don't know, man.
Yeah.
A lot of people go by their middle name.
That's true.
So he's a 5th year senior. So he's 18, 19 years old, right?
Yeah.
And Caitlin's 16 years old.
Just turned 16. Yeah.
So not terrible, but also there is like a 3-year age difference there that is going to, of course, be part of the power dynamic that makes this abusive relationship possible.
And I'm not saying that there's always an age difference in abusive relationships, because obviously that is not true. But in my personal anecdotal experience, the person who emotionally abused me was older. And that was kind of one of the reasons. Like, it wasn't because he was older and he emotionally abused me, but there was this weird power dynamic like in our relationship. And it was definitely because of our age difference.
Yes. Thank you. My abuser was also older than me. He was 3 years older than me. And he had a child.
Something about that. Something about older men. I just think that, like, well, it's because they like prey on younger women because they know that,
right?
Yeah, they can. There's a reason they're not dating women their age. And again, I've said this before and I'll say it again. My husband and I have an age difference, quite a considerable, like not crazy, considerable age difference, but we definitely have an age difference. And obviously you can date people that are not in your age and it can work out really well. I like to think it works out pretty well between me and my husband. But the time that we found each other in our lives is, what made the world of difference. And the fact that he didn't use it as a weird controlling power dynamic over me. That also played a good role in why it worked out for us.
That's not Mike's thing.
Yeah, definitely not his thing. So yeah, back into chapter 6 here. We're basically fighting with mom and dad about she can go out. Dad's like, yeah. Mom's like, you just have so much on your plate and you have a test or whatever. And she's like, Jesus Christ, Mom, it's Saturday. Like, I will study tomorrow. It's fine. And for the first time ever, I'm like, yes, just listen to your mother and stay in because just this boy is not going to be any good. And then we get into what is probably the worst first date of all time. And I don't know why she ever wanted to see this boy again, except for the fact that, like, mentally she is going through a lot of things right now. And she's searching for connection in all the wrong places is why. But he essentially picks her up and then takes her on drug deals. Like, that is what he does. He drives her around to go sell drugs. That's what he does.
Like, waits in the car. Am I right?
Yeah, the one place she goes in, because that's more of like a party. And so he's like, yeah, follow me, I guess. And then the next place is like a trailer park. And it's like a mom and her kid. And so he's like, oh, no, like, just stay in the car for this one. And she kind of like says something to him at some point about like, oh, yeah, she's like, you haven't even talked to me since you picked me up. And he's like, talked, he said. The lighter popped with a click and he reached forward to grab it. Yes. And then he's like, okay, then what do you want to talk about? And then he's all like, do you just want me to take you home? And she's like, no. And I'm like, no, girl, just like go home. And then they go to his parents, which they're having, I don't know exactly like what, some kind of party. I don't know if it's like for his dad's job, the mom's job, but it seems like some kind of like work sort of function at their house that they're hosting. And they're very upset that he was late, essentially. He stays out in the pool house, which is just the most rich kid BS I've ever heard.
Yeah. Can you imagine having a pool house? Can you imagine having a pool? Oh, wait. I had a pool growing up. I'm a fucking asshole. Sorry. I've been broke for so long that I'm like, was there ever a time? I was upper middle class at one point. I do not remember this. That is so foreign to me. I can't even tell you.
We did not have a pool, but my adorable grandma did have a pool and she lived pretty close. So we just like rode our bikes to her house.
Stop being so cute. I'm sick of it. I do want to say on page 75 that she is surprised that he's selling drugs, which is confusing.
It's like, that's how you met him, basically.
Right. Like, you saw him selling drugs already. So what are you confused about?
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah.
So they are out. This isn't when they're at the trailer in the country. And he makes her wait in the car for 18 and a half minutes.
Like, why would you not leave after that? She then goes to his parents' house. Like, why?
Why would you...
This is his first date, drug dealing and taking her to his parents' like work function at their house. It's like his idea of
right. And it only
and she goes with it. she goes with it. So yeah, when they
Also-
show up, sorry, go ahead.
He doesn't tell her that he's at his house, do they? Does he?
No, like when they pull up, he isn't like, oh yeah, this is my house and my parents are having a thing. He just like, he took her to 2 different places. This is the 3rd place they show up. And when they go in, she recognizes his mom because, as she had like mentioned earlier, like her face is all around town. So she realizes like, oh, this is where he lived. Also, though, apparently one pro for Rogerson, he must be very neat and tidy because she mentions the pool house is like very well kept. And she's like, oh, it's probably a maid. But then she realized something he did and is like, oh, no, like I think he just might be neat and tidy. And I'm like, oh, interesting.
Yeah. It's probably because of his dad. But
Probably.
It's funny to me that he brings her to his house for the first time and he like has her smoke pot before they go in.
Yes.
Also, another thing I want to note is that she keeps saying that they're smoking weed out of a ceramic bowl. And has Sarah Dawson ever smoked weed before? Because I've seen ceramic bowls now on like TikTok that are like handmade.
Right.
But it's like always glass. I've never smoked out of something ceramic. I wonder if that was like
maybe do you think it was like of the time sort of thing?
Maybe.
And like in this book the other night, like Mike came in and they're like talking about it and they always refer to it as pot. And I was like, oh, it's so funny. Like that's just very like of the time. Like I just feel like our generation always just says like weed. So yeah, we get, okay. So here basically is where we find out, which unfortunately is a very sad but true statistic, the cycle of abuse. So we get to the house, her mom, Rogerson's mom is all like, your dad's really not pleased with you. And, you know, you said you're going to be here and where were you? And so they go to the pool house, dad comes in and he just hits him very hard across the temple. And we basically learn that he is abusive. And I think that makes me very sad is even though, yes, it is a very true and very sad statistic that there is a cycle of abuse. It also does make me super, super sad that when people did grow up in a parental abuse situation, that they are then afraid to enter relationships or have kids of their own because they're afraid that they're going to do it. Just because you have been abused obviously doesn't mean you are going to. You were a victim. Obviously, in this situation, Rogerson is a victim. And he does end up continuing the cycle. But it always breaks my heart when I hear people are like afraid to have kids or whatever because they were hurt when they were a kid. And it's like, no, that you are not a bad person. Like a bad thing happened to you. You were not a bad person. And that's such an important distinction. So while this does happen to be an example of it going the wrong way, there are so many good examples of it not continuing. Yeah. And I just wanted to point that out because yeah.
Yes. The latest Bachelorette from the show, The Bachelorette.
That's my favorite thing when you get excited about The Bachelor or Bachelorette.
It's so good. But anyway, she has like part of her like whole storyline is that her mom was like a shitty mom and then like abandoned her basically and like has nothing to do with her anymore. So she was like constantly the really fucked up thing about this show is like how real the traumas are that when they bring them up. But she was like constantly terrified of like even the idea of becoming a mom because she was like, what if I end up exactly like my mom? And it's like, the fact that you're so concerned about that means that it's not going to happen. But also like, that is so horrible. And I'm so sorry. It makes me so sad.
It is. I mean, there's just so many everyday like traumas that people go through that really messes them up. And it just makes me so sad that like, people live in fear of something like that. Like, oh God, what if I turn you're not your parents? Like, right. I have really good news. You are not your parents. You are your own person. You could be your own person. You can live a really happy, fulfilling life.
Yes, you can break the cycle of abuse. It's in your power to do so.
Yeah. Preach.
So
we get to
she like comforts him after his father hits him, and then they have like this whole moment.
Which, so they basically just want to have the very worst first date ever, and they have this moment, and he's basically vulnerable for a minute, which one would be after something like that happens, and then it's like that's what kind of turns the date around, which is so sad. Like that's what kind of makes her want to stay, and it's like no, like I mean, I don't know, check up on the guy, make sure he's, if I saw something like that, I don't think I could completely exit that person's life because I would be concerned, like, oh God, like this person is really going through something. But that doesn't mean you have to like stay in a romantic relationship with him. He still took you on the world's worst first date.
Right.
So.
Right. Like, yeah. That's a thing. Like, I feel like we do have this problem because, especially back in this time period, I think it's a little better now, but like, we've always been told and conditioned that women should be like taking care of people and like fixing people. So when you see like a man in this vulnerable state and see this horrible thing happening to him, you're like, oh, it's my responsibility to pick up the pieces and like believe in him and let him like thrive with my support. And that'll get you in a bad situation.
You can fix him. And listen here, ladies, you can't.
You cannot.
You know, it's going to fix him therapy. And like that's what he needs. He doesn't need a girlfriend. Trust me. It's not going to end well.
Trust and believe. We know what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think that's definitely, yeah, I agree. I think it's gotten, I hope a lot better. But yeah, I think that is something, girl, the caretaker, you can fix him. Oh, he just needs love. And then, no. I
actually get like so excited when I hear about how my nieces and nephews handle boys. Like my niece, there was some boy, my niece is 13, almost 14. And there was this boy last year who was like playing a bunch of girls, and the girls like screenshotted everything and like put it all over the internet and was like, this is happening, fuck this guy. And like, it just like moved on, and they were like, nope, we're not doing this. And it's like, that would have never happened when I was your age. Like, ever. Like that. And my niece is like, just like so sure of herself. And like, she doesn't take like any shit, and she's just like, I am here doing my thing. And I'm like, that's amazing to see. I love that.
Bless, honestly. That
Keep
is
doing your thing, girl.
Yeah. I feel like, in our day, back in our day in high school, it was, I really hate the internet and stuff sometimes. It's a blessing and a curse, like most new technologies, especially when we are of the generation that's growing up. We're the guinea pig generation of learning it. But I think there's so many things, like the fact that like sometimes I'm like, oh God, these kids, as seeing social media, having, you know, the pressures of it. Like I can't imagine that. But then I think certain things like being able to screenshot and whatever, and then banding together. And I'm like, hells yeah, sisters. And I love nowadays, I think back in the day it was so easy for women to pit each other against each other in a situation like that. And I love that now they're like, no, the guy is wrong. We're on the right, and we're going to stand together, and we're going to ostracize him. And it's like, yeah. To the
yeah. No girl on girl crime. No girl on girl. Yeah, I love that.
We ain't about that for sure. We get to what is part 2. Essentially, the first part was called Cass. This part, as we start here, chapter 7, today is called Rogerson. So we start page 89, chapter 7. When she basically is just saying that, like, from that point on, like, her and Rogerson are inseparable, which, right there, there's your flag.
You sure are.
And she says that basically, so this is just a little funny for me. She's basically saying that they never really went on dates, which again, gross. She says that she just, you know, like for him is all about motion. They're always like going from party, place to place, whatever. Yeah, because he's basically just having you tag along while he deals drugs. And so she says, on the top of page 91, to the college guys in the dorm room with the huge Bob Marley poster and the couch that smelled like rancid beer. And it's like, I love college guys because all of them are such a stereotype of themselves. Like we all knew that guy that like got into college, basically was like, wow, weed is awesome. And then just like straight up was like 420 man, putting the Bob Marley poster up and like turning into a stereotype of myself. And we did. We all knew that person. And you know what? They were usually pretty good guys, but so stereotypical. So that just cracked me up because I was like, yeah, I knew that guy. So it's just talking about they go back and forth all the time. And this is his idea of a date, I guess. He takes her to McDonald's to buy chocolate shakes, and they go to Topper Lake to like hook up. And she talks about how they fight about music and stuff all the time. And of course, he's listening to classic rock that means something, and she's listening to pop music. And so one time he gets in the car and he's like, "What is this shit?" And she's like, "#1 in the country," I told him smugly. And I was like, yes, queen.
Yes, queen.
I hate when people are pretentious about music and it's like, oh, this popular stuff. And it's like, yeah, it's popular for a reason, because it's fucking good.
Reason. Also, a lot of the times, not to soapbox here, everybody, but a lot of the times the things that are seen in society as like unintelligent or meaningless or stupid is marketed towards women, is written by women, is sung by women. And because it is women focused, it's inherently like stupid, when that is not the fucking case at all.
Yep.
At all. Okay?
Oh, pisses me off so much. Me off.
Oh my gosh. And there's always that fucking guy that's like, it's for girls. Like,
it's crazy to me how many men are like ashamed to admit that they like Taylor Swift, or have to like preface it with like, well, I think it's cool she writes her own songs. Like, they like, you know what I mean? Like, because they know that like in society, because it's something that's very popular amongst women, that they're like not allowed to like. And it's like, no, just say you effing like Taylor Swift because she's one of the best songwriters of our generation. You don't have to preface it. You don't have to bag on her. Just say you like her music. Like,
right.
Everyone likes her music. It's fine.
And we had this fucking neighbor in Albany, and I know he won't hear this, so you don't have to cut it out, because his girlfriend unfollowed me on Instagram like right away. But he was such a pretentious asshole, dude. And he used to I told him that I went to the Jonas Brothers concert. He made fun of me for like 10 minutes. I was like, I fucking love the Jonas Brothers.
You're like, cool,
there's
bro.
Literally no shade. Like, their music's so fun. It always has been.
Yeah.
So, and then me and Andrew were talking about how we watched One Tree Hill together, and the guy called Andrew gay.
Okay, first of all, what year is it? Like, really, that's the insult you're going with? And second of all, fuck right off.
Right. Like, I like looked at him and I was like, you call yourself like liberal and you act like you're on your fucking high horse and everyone in the South is stupid and you're smarter than everyone because you were raised in New York. And you're going to use gay as an insult to a man who watches a show that was marketed towards women? That's like, actually good and entertaining.
Please, get out of here.
Like, no. Go listen to the Grateful Dead in your closet.
Yeah, for the love of God. And just, the amount of like...
So mad.
I love movies a lot. I love TV shows a lot, as everyone knows, because I won't stop like talking about them on this podcast. But I just like love pop culture, like books, movies, whatever. I took some classes in college. I worked in a movie theater, as I mentioned earlier on this podcast, and I run in a lot of film circles, I guess you could say. Like, a lot of my friends I found through different internet forums about movies. And because of that, it's obviously a lot of dude bros, and it's always pretentious guys that like want to tell you why certain, and like, you're not allowed to like rom-coms because they're marketed to women. And I was like, When Harry Met Sally is one of the greatest movies that's ever been made. So you can shut up right now. Like, the amount of fights I had to have with stupid pretentious guys. And again, guys who like really thought that they were so progressive and like good guys that would just like shit on things because it was marketed at women. And I was like, you're not a cool progressive guy if you like can't see that. You know?
Right, you're not a cool progressive guy if you make fun of women things, and if like no, like, you're a misogynist and you're using your political liberalness to like put you back on this high horse because that's where you live. You just look down on everyone and you think you're hot shit, and I'm so sorry for any woman who dates you. And that's all I have to say.
God. Seriously.
So anyway, now that I'm like 2 glasses of wine and I'm like, fuck that patriarchy.
Oh my God, literally. This is me though. Anytime okay. So like anytime I go out, if I have like more than 2 drinks and I'm with a certain group of friends, we just sit in the corner and I'm like, and another thing about the thing. And I'm like, I don't know why I just go on feminist rants when I get drunk, but evidently it really brings it out in me. It's fine.
Oh my God. When my company, so I'm hitting my 1-year mark at my corporate job. I've never worked a corporate job. This is my first one. So it's been a learning curve. And I'm also like extremely unfiltered, and I like just don't really think a lot before I like start conversations. Like, is this conversation appropriate to be having right now? I don't think about that stuff. So I went to a corporate like meetup in Minneapolis last April and got drunk, and a bunch of my coworkers are Republicans. And I went like out of my way to like debate political things with these people. And like, luckily, the woman that I talk to like 90% of the time is like kind of my mentor, and she's actually super sweet, and she's like the most lovely person ever. And we were having a very respectful conversation, and we were hearing each other out, and it's like totally fine. We love each other. But like, it's just like once I start drinking, it's like I don't know when to like limit those kinds of conversations. I get bored with like stupid shit. I'm like, no, let's talk about your childhood trauma. Let me know everything that's happened to you. I want to know it all. I don't want to sit here and talk about the fucking weather.
I really don't know how. I was listening to something the other day about this, about like, like the bar scene, like going out to bars and like trying to basically like pick up people, right? And I was like, I really don't know how that's a thing for people. Because yeah, like when I get drunk, I don't want to do the like flirty talk or like small talk with people. Like I do suddenly like very much, I'm like, how are we going to solve the climate crisis? You know what I mean? And I'm like, that's what I turn into. So like, how do people do bars like and not turn into suddenly like get on their soapbox people? Because that's me drunk.
That's me drunk, like 100%. And like, also, I don't want to waste my time with people if we're not going to agree. You know what I mean? Like, if you think that like abortion isn't like a human right, like I'm all set. But one thing I will say is like, when I first started dating Andrew, I had just gotten out of an engagement. It was a really bad relationship. And I asked him intense questions right off the bat. Do you want kids? Do you want to get married? Would you be okay with me wanting you to ask my dad's permission before proposing? Like, these were like fundamental things. I was like, I don't want kids. So if you want kids, I'm not even going to waste my time.
Right.
And then like, it was just like, he was like, oh my God, this is kind of intense.
Like,
and I'm like,
trial.
I'm like, I'm not wasting my time.
Yeah. Like,
buddy.
I think I'm kind of intense when ever since like I was before, but ever since my like really bad relationship. I think maybe it's the thing about people getting on really bad relationships. The next time you're just like, I'm laying it all out right now. I was thinking about this the other day in reading this book and thinking about this relationship and like the boundaries that I formed for myself after being in an emotionally abusive relationship. And I was thinking about the movie 500 Days of Summer and how much I love it and how many people, much like Fight Club, Dubros went and saw it and didn't understand the point of it. And I was like, the whole point is you're supposed to be on her side because she very clearly states what she wants. And I kind of did that in the relationship that I was with this one guy who ended up treating me very, very poorly. And he made me feel bad about it. And then one day I woke up and I was like, no. I was very clear with what I wanted out of this. And I'm right. He's wrong. And like, I had this like light bulb moment. And ever since then, like when I started my relationship with my husband, literally the night that we kind of started talking and we're like, we think we might want to be more than friends. Like we weren't like officially like FBO or anything, but like we were like, we might want to date each other. And yeah, before I even like started dating, I like basically gave him a questionnaire and told him very firmly things I believed in and I would not back down from and whatever. And one of the big things for me, which is going to come up a lot in this chapter, which is a total abuse tactic, is separating someone from their group of family and friends and whatever. Like that's classic abusive behavior. And we start seeing that here in chapter 7. I had that very much so with one of the guy who was very emotionally abusive to me. And thankfully, because I do have such a good core relationship with my family, I never really lost sight of them, but some of my friends I did kind of lose sight of because of him. And I made it very clear when I started dating my husband, and I was like, my friends and my family have been my friends and my family for years. They are going to be my friends and my family no matter what happens in this relationship. So I will not cut them out of my life. I will make time to see my friends. I won't hang out with you every day. And you are not allowed to guilt trip me for not hanging out with you every day. If that is not okay with you, sign out now. Because like, I'm not doing that again, you know? And like, it's sad that you have to like make that abundantly clear sometimes, but yeah, like I'm not going to waste my time with someone who's like, you're spending too much time with your friends, you're spending too much time with your family. And it's like, yeah, I had a life before you, and I'm going to continue to have that life even though you're together. Like, you're supposed to be an additive thing, not a detractive thing, you know
right?
I mean?
Exactly. Yeah, I unfortunately was in an abusive relationship and then moved to Florida, and a year later got into another relationship, which I don't like to call abusive because I have like generally good feelings towards my ex-fiance at this point. I understand where he was coming from. I kind of like, I don't think he's an abusive person. I just think our relationship was extremely toxic, and it's very possible it was both ways. But so I don't like to put like that kind of like, I don't like to talk shit about him basically. But it was a very toxic relationship, and it was extremely unhealthy. And I was completely isolated from every single one of my friends. So it was like back to back. I've been in these relationships that were just like absolutely deteriorating to my mental health. And I was like, so when I started seeing Andrew and I realized it wasn't going to be like a casual kind of thing, which was my intention. I was like, yeah, this isn't like, I can't mess around. Like, I can't do this bad shit again. So I like need to get some ground rules laid here, because this is that I can't do it again.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's totally fair. I think there's nothing wrong with setting your boundaries and making it very clear, like what you want out of something. And I know that, I don't know, I tell friends all the time, like, it's like this game, right? When you're in the talking phase relationship in this day and age with dating apps and texting and whatever, like we don't date the way we used to, right? And so many people, you know, like my friends will be like, oh, I met up with this guy, he texted me this, how should I respond? And I'm like, truthfully, like I've never like played that, like, well, I don't know what to say. Like, I'm like a very honest person in both my platonic and romantic relationships. So that boggles my mind when people are like, what's the right thing to say? And I'm like, the truth. I would think and they're like, well, what if he doesn't like it? And I'm like, don't waste your time on him then. It's my personal opinion. But well, maybe it was just me.
I know. Yeah, I can have a hard time. I can sometimes be a little too. I'm a little intense.
What? No. I've never found that about you, Michael. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. I'm an intense.
She just gets like real like Boston real quick. It's like basically as I'm like, oh, the Northeast is coming out. Okay. Down the hatches, everyone.
Oh, man.
Listen, I can tell now. Okay, so if you're not following like Mike Land on any social media, which it's a really great time, everyone, I just want you to know. But like, I can tell from your facial expression when I like start an Instagram story if it's gonna be like a rant or if it's gonna be like just like a normal like, oh, whatever, I did this today kind of thing. Because like there are certain ones that's like you were posed and you were ready for something, and I'm like, oh, it's gonna be good. Like I get so excited to click on it because I'm like, oh, she's fired up about something, and it gets me. Like it'll be like in your car, like the best ones are like when you're in your car and it's like you've been driving around and you've been thinking about it, and like it just comes out.
I was
my favorite thing.
Really fucking pissed this past year when I was living in Albany because people were like nonstop talking about like how everyone in the South is racist, and I'm like, no, the fucking South has the biggest population of Black people in the entire country, and you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. This is where grassroots movements are happening. You're a lazy liberal, and it would get me really
got real heated.
It was
a good rant.
No life, y'all. I have no life in Albany. I literally didn't leave my apartment for that entire year. I had very few friends and I was working from home and I just never left my apartment. So I had nothing but time to get mad.
Get real fired up about stuff.
That's my thing. I get real fired up. It's just who I am. Also, I'm starting to get drunk, so we should probably wrap this up.
Yeah, I was like, that's Margaret has to go to bed, everyone. And she's starting to feel we're really about to get her thoughts and feelings on the patriarchy if she takes any more sips of that one.
Yeah, I'm gonna make my desk a standing desk.
It's about to happen. All right, chapter 7. So they're talking about the music. They're fighting over that. He says, "Oh, she says, I don't even know why I like you." And I'm like, "Yes, go with those feelings." And again, he brings up the effing hair, and he's like, "Yeah, he smiled at me. It's the hair." And I'm like, "No, it's not. It's not your stupid dreadlocks. Like, get out of here." They do talk about a page at 93. She says, again, this is just one of his many flaws. He divided the worlds coolly into black and white, no grays or middle ground. That's a problem. People are either cool or assholes, situations good or bad. My friends in my life at school consistently fell into each of the latter. And it's like, yep, he's already doing it. He's already telling her that like her life isn't good enough. Her friends aren't good enough. He wants to hang out. Like as the chapter progresses, it turns more and more to like he can't tolerate her friends and she has to go like hang out with like his cooler friends, basically.
Yeah.
So he's already like starting to separate her, which
yeah, we start to see like on these pages. Also, I want to say on page 90, she says, the first week, whenever I thought about him, I remember brushing my finger over his eyebrow, tracing the hurt, trying to give back what his father had taken away. Now I take that bit of Rogerson and hold it close to me. That fall, as I struggled to leave Cass's shadow behind once and for all, he was just what I needed. So again, like we're seeing how she's primed and ready for an abusive relationship. She's completely vulnerable. She's feeling completely lost. She's having this like major life change. And she's like, oh, cool. Something I can fix. And then on pages 92 and 93, as we were talking about, like we start to see kind of the groundwork that gets laid when you get into an abusive relationship, which is like belittling your intelligence by making fun of, you know, interests you have, like, you know, music and stuff like that. And then we can see that he's isolating her by being like, your friends are a bunch of idiots. I don't know why you hang out with them. Which like, again, I was like, I just had to like put the book down during this chapter because I was like, oh my God, this is bringing up like so much. But yeah, we see like the groundwork being laid for this like absolutely terrible relationship. Like you can tell Sarah Dessen has clearly experienced this for herself, or at least got like some real in-depth information from people who have, because it's so like everything's so subtle, but when you know, you know.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's a really great thing about like this chapter is she does really lay the groundwork really well, because it doesn't like happen overnight. It's not like one day you meet a person, the next day they're just like a complete abusive asshole. It is these like little things that build and build and build until it crescendos. And so I think that this chapter does that really beautifully, like lays that groundwork of those little microaggressions that turn into very, very big aggressions as things kind of go forth. The other thing that makes me really sad in this chapter is when Boo and Caitlin's mom are talking about like her little hobbies and stuff and the different things she's been doing. And for instance, the Victorian era dolls. And so she's like, oh, Cass and I were thinking about doing a photography class, but then it just never happened. She went away for the summer and now obviously she's gone. And so Boo's like, oh, you should do it. So when Caitlin comes in, she kind of hears this conversation. Caitlin basically volunteers to do the photography class with her. And her mom kind of like shoots her down at first, which breaks my heart. Like, oh, like you're not good enough. Like she doesn't say that to her, but that's 100% how Caitlin interprets it, which I obviously understand how she could interpret it that way. Absolutely. And then she's like, oh, no. Like, you're really busy with everything. I don't want to, overwhelm you. And she's like, I've got time for that, Mom. And that just really made me sad.
Yeah, that was a really huge bummer. This whole conversation she has with Boo is also a really big bummer. Like I have on highlighted on page 96. I still can't believe she would have been unhappy. I mean, when we went to buy those pillow shams for Yale, she was so excited, just excited as me. I know she was. And it's just like obvious how her mom isn't seeing any reality, really. Right. Because in the beginning of the novel, Caitlin makes it clear that Cass had been off for a whole year ever since her man broke up with her. And for mom to be like, she was so happy, she was so excited. It's like, obviously not. You were excited. You were happy. Not
I know. Exactly. It's so funny, like, because you see, like the two different like perceptions of her, and like obviously Caitlin was certainly seeing something that like the mom wasn't. Like the mom was definitely projecting her thoughts and feelings on her daughter, which poor Cass. Poor Caitlin. Both of them. Just poor entire family.
Yeah, and then on page 98, Caitlin says that she feels like Boo is the only one who even noticed she was alive, which is like...
Yes. Oh, yeah, that's a dagger right to the heart. That's so depressing.
It really is.
She has her little run-in with Mike Evans, which, oh my God, guys, like, when they are rejected, don't they just... The nice guy is suddenly not so nice.
Yeah. Yeah, Mike is kind of like, people are talking shit about you. They're saying things about you. Rogerson is trouble. And again, like, we're not getting any, like, specifics. It's really just... And it's like, you know, me and you know that Rogerson is trouble because this is a book about an abusive relationship. But here, it doesn't seem like Mike has, like, good intentions. He's literally just jealous because she picked Rogerson over him. And Mike is like, oh, you know, doing that thing where he's like, he's not your type. People are talking about you.
Right. That's like, cool. Thanks, man. That's great. Thank you for that.
Right. It's like, okay, cool. Like, I still remember my abuser and I worked in the same restaurant, and he had worked there for many years. And I remember people who were like saying things that just sounded like they were jealous. And then like people who were like genuinely like, do you need me to walk you to your car? Do you need help? Like, you know, and you can fucking tell. You can tell.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But then, you know, Rogerson comes in and he does that like big man protect girlfriend thing. And
I love how she like kind of likes it, which again, this is what happens. If anyone ever says the word to you, I'm going to get on my quick soapbox here. I'm going to try to make this tangent quick because we're wasting daylight. But if anyone ever says to you, it's just a movie, it fucking isn't. Movies literally show us how to be as people. I took a mass media class once, and I thought that this person said like the smartest thing I've ever heard, which is movies don't teach you the like actual act of sex, but everything else that you know about sex you learn from movies, like setting the scene and the candles and the romance and the whatever and the music and what you should do. How did we all learn that? We learned that from movies. Obviously the actual act you learn from like your health class or whatever, and experimentation maybe, but like there's so many things that you learn, like the fact that sharks were so feared after the movie Jaws came out. Like, yeah, there was something people were afraid of, but the fact that they were hunted and the fact that the beaches literally saw loss of numbers. Like, if anyone ever says to you, it's just a movie, like, they're wrong. Like, movies are a reflection of us, and they teach us how to be human beings in a sense. And this right here, this like her being like, oh, I feel good because he protected me. Where do we learn that? We learn that from movies. And it's like, oh, it's cute if he's a little jealous, right? It's cute if he wants to defend my honor. And it's like, we learn that from movies. And then teenage girls think that that's like cute. And like, yeah, obviously you don't want your partner in life to like not want to defend your honor and stick up for you, but like it's not cute if like he sees you talking to a guy and he instantly is like, I'm a bow up, I'm a big tough man. And yeah, that's my rant about how movies teach us things. And if people are ever like, I don't understand, you're so upset, this is just a movie, it's not. It just isn't. And this right here is why. Crap like this.
Exactly. Right. Like our culture, or like our pop culture, like defines our society in such a huge way that people just like completely overlook, which is silly to me because it's obvious, as you said. Yeah, so gross. Then she starts talking about how Cass's first real boyfriend, Jason, who was the guy who broke her heart, was like very involved with their family and came over a lot and did stuff with her family. And she says she can't picture Rogerson being that kind of guy, which, ugh, yikes. You definitely want to date someone who likes being with your family, in my opinion.
Very true.
And like my nephew texted me the other day and was like, "What's Andrew's phone number?"
Aw, bless.
Just die. It's so cute. But yeah, she's like, "Oh, you know, well, he wouldn't do that. He's not a date guy." But on trivia night with Boo, Stuart, and her parents, they're like, "Bring him in." And then this is where we find out that Rogerson is like extremely smart.
Yes. Which
was
also
surprising.
Like, but I feel like, you know what I mean? Like, it isn't. Like, I feel like you do have to be very intelligent to be like manipulative, right? And like so much of abuse is like manipulation.
I don't know, because like one of my toxic relationship people was dumb as bricks.
I mean, they definitely can be, I don't know, dumb, but like, I just feel like it sort of tracks for him that like this particular character, I guess, that like he would be smart, because it's like, well, yeah, because he like, you know, like it's just like it kind of fits in that like rich guy, pretentious, manipulative kind of thing.
Also, we see later at some point, on 115, I'm skipping way ahead, but on page 115, she's like, "How do you know all this stuff?" And he's like, "My grandfather would buy me trivia books and then test me on them." Which like, seems like what? Unhealthy. Like, it does seem like there's some sort of pressure that was put on him to be like extra smart. And that's why he is, not necessarily because he like enjoys that stuff.
Yeah, I think it's his family life seems very interesting, to say the least.
Yeah. There are those like, it's like another Dan Scott.
Yes.
Family legacy kind of dude. Oh,
this whole bit at the end here of this chapter. Again, this chapter ends essentially they're at like another, like this whole chapter is kind of just about the beginning of their relationship, kind of finding a little bit about Rogerson, finding out that he is actually quite intelligent. Again, even if it was kind of for a weird reason, he does have this intelligence. And it's very much about like him kind of pushing her away from her crowd, and she's kind of getting away from the cheerleader stuff and more into the like going around to parties and making out in pool houses and all that kind of stuff sort of scene. This whole bit at the end though is just kind of like weird and funny about the great skin when they're talking to is it Karina or Karina? How have you been pronouncing that? I'm not sure. But she's like complimenting her on her skin or whatever. And then they're eating the dinner that like Dave made, and she's like still watching these like acne commercials. I don't know. It's just like it's sort of a weird ending to this chapter, but I guess just kind of showing us how she's kind of slowly but surely really kind of delving into his world, which again, I'm sure some of these people are really perfectly fine people. But yeah, they make the comment about how she's like the rebel cheerleader. They're really into like, oh, she's a cheerleader, she can't possibly be bad. And it's like, you've clearly never met a cheerleader, because all the cheerleaders I knew in high school were like the biggest partiers. But all right.
Yeah, I think that the like Corinne, what the hell was her name?
Corinna? I feel dumb, but I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
I don't think I've ever seen that name in my life. If anybody out there knows, let us know.
Please tell us.
I think like, so when you're in an abusive relationship, there's the part of them that is like good and you enjoy, and that's what keeps you in the relationship. So I think this is kind of one of those things that's like, oh, well, he has these super nice friends.
Right.
So, and his friends are like super cool, and we're smoking pot and we're chilling in their house, and it's like,
right.
way
They're like
laid back.
very welcoming to her. Like here they are complimenting her skin, making her dinner, you know, like they're having a pretty nice night.
I know.
All things considered.
Just backing up really quick, there was a couple spots I wanted to point out. So page 110, it says here, Rogerson seemed to almost like the fact that I was inexperienced, not just about sex, but most things. He enjoyed carting me around in my cheerleading outfit while he took bong hits or talked business with people who eyed me strangely as if I was a cartoon, not quite real. This was the same reason I was sure that he'd been interested in me the first night we met. It was a fair trade. With Rogerson, I was someone else, not Cass, not even me. I took his wildness from him and tried to fold it into myself, filling up the empty spaces all those second place finishes had left behind. So this paragraph right here is like loaded because we're seeing that Rogerson likes the fact that she's inexperienced because she's easier to manipulate in that way.
Yep.
And he can kind of hold his like experience and his intelligence over her in a power imbalance again. And then we see in this paragraph as well how she is trying to like escape her current reality, and this is why she is like with this man who's a little dangerous, because she's like, I need to be different, basically. Right. And then on page
also on that same like bit, she's talking about the fact that like she's struggling to keep her grades up. So already we're getting like a little red flag of like how this relationship is affecting her negatively. Not saying the grades are everything, but I mean, you know, she's clearly a pretty bright girl who's a pretty decent student, and now this guy is like already kind of, you know, tanking her grades.
Right. Yeah, he's like naturally smart because his grandfather was some weirdo who like jeopardied him as a kid. But she is just like a normal person, so it's like she can't keep up. Right. And you know, she's, as you said, she's like falling behind. Her grades are shit. She's like with this guy all the time. And you might be thinking to yourself, where are her parents? Well, my mother, now distracted with Cass's Lamont Whipper sightings, had eased off her own involvement in my cheerleading, something that almost would have bothered me had I really taken the time to think about it. It was so easy, again, for Cass to take center stage. Like, again, we're seeing, like, she has grown up in Cass's shadow. She has grown up as, like, the second option and, like, not as important, not as good, I guess. Right. Like, not as worthy of love, which is why she is now, like, super into this dangerous, mysterious guy who's giving her, like, the attention she's always craved.
Looking for love in the wrong places.
Ugh. In the wrong places.
That's
also shout out Corinna, or I think it's Corinna,
right? I hope.
Worked at Applebee's. You worked at Applebee's, right?
Yes.
Shout out.
Yes, Corinna. Girl, house to the
Of course, Corinna is a server, by the way.
Yeah, right.
Like, you wouldn't even have had to tell me. And
I'd be like, yeah, that tracks. Yeah. And that takes us up to date. We are finished with chapter 7. We'll be back next week with chapter 8. It's going to get real.
Yeah.
Oh, God. It's going to, the next 2 installments of this.
I'll be drunk in the next episode, too.
Yeah, we also will probably also need wine for the next one. We put up a tentative schedule. We're usually very good at sticking with our schedules. We probably will. It will probably be accurate, but we did just make the little note due to the nature of this. If we at any point need to stop reading or stop recording, we're for our own mental health and all that jazz, we're allowing that of ourselves because that's totally understandable for us to do. So hopefully y'all are understanding if the schedule is not 100% accurate, but it should be pretty accurate. I'm like losing my voice all of a sudden. I don't know. It's the wine. It's the crazy temperature changes that keep happening in Florida. It's killing my allergies. But
happening here as well.
God, it's so geez, I swear. But yeah, so hopefully we will be able to stick to that. But just please be understanding that yeah, I think everyone knows. I think everyone knows this is a tough one, but it is a tough one, and we're doing our best. I hope everyone out there is doing. I just feel like every week after we breathe this depressing novel, I need to like do a check-in with everyone. I hope everyone's doing okay. Hope everyone has a really glorious week, and we'll be back next week to depress everyone some more with wine, though. So who knows, y'all? You might get a patriarchy rant from Michael Ann. So stay tuned for that.
Don't worry, Bethany's family gets cuter and cuter by the episode, so you'll have some happy things to look forward to.
I will have some cute tidbit about my family next week. I promise.
Bring everything. Someday we're gonna have your mom on this show. We have to. Irish Gator girl, I need you in my life.
Get on here, mama. Oh my god, she would love it. She'd be very excited. So anyways, we will see you all next week, and thanks for listening. Yeah, be well out there, everyone. Take care of yourselves.
Take care of yourselves. Give your pets kisses.
Oh yeah, they deserve it, and you do too. Bye.
Bye.